So, oh my, I think the one way I could answer that as quickly as possible is that my mother says I was born doing what I'm doing. She had a lot of movement inside her, and she couldn't keep me still, apparently. So I was always making little dances as a young child. I don't know what inspired that. Quite honestly, I think I saw movement in everything. She found me to be very active and full of imagination. My parents both did, actually. And then I would always put on little shows for them. I think, we seldom watched TV, but I think it was a weekend thing that we did, and at that time. And so anything I saw on TV, I would sort of reinterpret. So it was quite interesting, my little shows and little choreographies that I would make as a little girl. But my mother, I was brought up with a lot of voice, a lot of music in the house. My mother sang every day. And I'm sure that is part of the inspiration, which is music. I was surrounded by music constantly. It was always playing, a lot of opera, of course, with my Italian background. My mother had a mezzo-soprano voice, so there's a lot of inspiration in that way that drew me to what I'm doing today. I know that. I also think my parents were very creative. I started to realize that my father had a lot of creativity in him as well. He was always making things and inventing little things around the house. One of the things I'm so inspired by till today, remembering how we needed water to hit different parts of the garden. Of course, I grew up with this, being my Italian background, with the big vegetable garden. And so my dad invented this sort of little system that all the pipes went around the yard, and he made it on his own with whatever he had in the garage, and all these little pipes and little holes, and before you knew it, this was a while back, the whole garden was easily, watered when it needed to be, just by a push of a button or turning on of a tap. And I remember as a young child going, wow, how did he do that? When did he do that? And so I'm thinking, and it's like what I tell my students as well, everything inspires movement. Everything around us, the space, architecturally, the way, the movement that is you could see in buildings and objects and shapes and a room that you're in can inspire movement. And I think that happened a long time ago inside me too, just watching my dad. I loved my parents so much, so I think I was in awe of them, I was inspired by them, and I'm sure all of this led me to what I do today, dancing, choreographing, working with people. I tried to find that place that I could feel free to do that in. I think that is why I'm bringing myself to that point, is that my parents always also created an environment for me that I was free to do that, to put on my little shows, to create around the house, to play the music when I wanted to, and because there was a lot of communication that brought us in that direction. So the environment led me to it as well, the environment that they provided. The environment that eventually I was involved in. A friend of my dad's one day said to him, why don't you send your daughter to a dance school? Like, she's obviously a dancer, she wants to dance. And we didn't have a lot of money at that time, but my parents found a way, and I was there when I started my dance classes in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. With Gladys Forster, I was really lucky. I had a wonderful, wonderful teacher who was like-minded in the sense of creativity was important, using your imagination was important, allowing that to be out, listening to the dancer. She realized that I had a lot of creativity in me, so she let that come out. She was not restrictive at all. So I had a very strong and strict classical base from her, but in the choreography process or when she was creating little works on us, she allowed that little voice inside me to come out, and that I'm very grateful to her for that as well. She allowed that to happen. Again, providing the environment that is important, that there's a sense of freedom that you can do that. You have that inside you, so let it out, you know, and yeah, I'm grateful for those people, my parents, Gladys Forster for sure, and then the people along the way. Yeah, you know, I did the classical training for my whole career, and I worked very hard at it. My Royal Academy studies brought me to a very high level in my classical training. But I was exposed to a lot of people, a lot of diverse training, a lot of wonderful people were introduced to me through my first years in study to where I ended up, you know, receiving full scholarships to dance at the Banff Center, which is a wonderful creative environment as well in the summer. To work, I received full scholarship to dance at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet professional program. So there are different levels of study that came to me there. And from there I came to Minnesota Dance Theater to dance with Lois Holton, who introduced me to her Cunningham training and classical ballet at the same time. And I performed with the company, watching this wonderful choreographer as well, being inspired by the fact that she had this strong contemporary language that she was sharing while we were still working in a classical base. And I have to admit that this was probably the beginning of a very important time in my career. That was probably an arc, the beginning of an arc for me, because her, a strong sense of contemporary movement laced in with the classical ballet training made me realize that my choreography had my creative impulses, let's say, at that time, because I wasn't a choreographer yet. But my creative impulses started to really open up into another, let's say, another dimension, another idea, another environment as well that would just open up to, wow, everything's possible with movement. Like, I really could create a whole new language with everything I've been taught. I don't have to worry that it has to be a classical ballet or a contemporary ballet. That whole mix is coming in. I just have to find the language that I want to express. So I think going back a little bit, my young creative life, even through high school when I was creating little dances there for the gym class, or just to get the school involved with dance. I mean, I just started to, you know, dance was my life, so I started to share it with everybody, and I'd make dances for everybody, and I make dances for the kids in the school. But I think when I left Minnesota Dance Theater, I was invited to dance at Les Grands Ballets Canadiens in Montréal, and during my time there, I definitely was involved in the choreographic workshop, and I started to lead that as well. Excuse me. So I started to coordinate the creative choreographic workshop, and we used to put on shows, and I just involved all my colleagues in the company, and everyone had, you know, anyone who wanted to choreograph, anyone who wanted to do, you know, was interested in lighting or being part of the stage managing, or I just sort of opened up this process that I thought, let's just all create a little group that we could do that within our company time. Well, actually not on company time, lunchtime, after company time, and then when, you know, luckily our directors were wonderful. They always gave us time to do this as well at a period in our season. So those were my beginning roots to choreography, to being a little, even thinking independently while I was on full contracts. I think I was very lucky. I was really, really lucky. I was in just the right environments that led me to what I'm doing. I really was, and I'm so grateful, so grateful.
You mentioned being Italian. Is that important?
Oh, is it important? Of course. Being Italian, it's my roots. Hence the hands. I realize I'm still talking with them. Being Italian, I don't know. My parents came from Italy, so I'm first generation. I was born in Toronto, Canada. Toronto, Ontario, Canada. My parents, my brother, they were all born in Italy, came over. So we grew up speaking Italian. That's my first language. English came as my father was learning English. He would go to night school to learn English because, you know, he realized that he had to get a job, he had to do all those things, obviously, to get a good job, he had to speak English. So my family, as my father was learning English better and better, and I was learning English with him as well. So my second language was English. Being Italian, well, it's our root, isn't it? It's the root of the base of who we are. I think inside me I have the voice of my mother, a very expressive human being. She had a very strong voice. I think, like I've mentioned earlier, that affected me. The Italian heritage, the cooking, the smell of the food, the gardening, the really fresh food that we used to eat. I was always in the kitchen with my mother. We all had to do our bit. We all had to clean. We had to clean after ourselves. We had a very clean environment that we had to live in. I bring that up because I think also her sense of, you know, you wake up in the morning and you will make your bed, you know, that's how it starts. And she made that a lot of fun for me, you know, like that we would make the bed together and that you have you start your day and everything's ready to go because you've made your bed and we're having breakfast. So she sort of had a way of, setting things up for me. And that sort of little sense of organization as well. I don't know if that's being Italian, I don't mean that at all, but that's just how it was in my household. And sort of being brought up with that music and voice and passion, you know, different dynamics in the household as well. So I was exposed to that a lot. Being Italian, music, very expressive way of speaking perhaps. The passion, as I bring up again, music, food, dance, arts, culture, those were parts of my upbringing that are rooted in me, I think. My grandfather played guitar, my mother sang, so these are, My father loved it so much, you know, he would love to listen to my mother sing, so that's part of my upbringing. So, what more can I tell you about being Italian? I'm considered an Italo-Canadian, so Italo-Canadian being that actually Italian is my first root, and then being Canadian. But I was born in Canada, so I am Canadian as well. Absolutely.
Well, one thing about being Italian is that your people are in Italy, mostly. Was that a thing for you?
Oh yeah.
To have, you know, all of this family someplace else.
Well, yeah, but you know, my father brought over most of the family. My mother comes from a huge family. She had, it ended up being family of 9. You know, brothers and sisters. Most of them came over back to Canada. My father actually brought most of them over. I still have a lot of family left in Italy, so lucky me, I get to visit them. And I have places to go when I am in Italy, and it's really wonderful. I love that I still have connection to Italy. When I when my parents first brought me to Italy, when I arrived there, I knew I was from there, even though I wasn't born there. When I arrived there, I just had such a warm sensation come over me, I was so excited and happy, but I felt like I belonged there. And so I knew that I came from those roots. I felt it strongly. And when I met my family, it's as if I already knew them for the first time. When I met my family for the first time, I already knew them. It's hard to explain that, but I just knew I knew them. I felt them. So we have a lot of family still in Italy, and we still connect with them, absolutely. Lucky me, after Les Grands Ballets, I was invited to dance with Nederlands Dans Theater III, which is a company for dancers 40 and over. So I had a bit of a second dance career that came to me, which was a huge highlight in my career, in my life. And that meant I had to live in Holland, and I lived there for 8 years. But that also meant that I went to Italy every year, easily. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump. So of course, once or twice a year, I was going over to visit my family in Italy. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because of various recent events, the word immigrant is huge in the public consciousness right now. And I'm wondering how you experienced yourself as an immigrant to Canada.
Well, I never thought I'd be bringing these things up in this kind of an interview. But interesting question, really, truly. I'll be honest with you. Well, I'm always honest with you, but I'm just being that I could remember very difficult times because I was Italian in a different type of a neighborhood, that it was difficult in the schools. They actually changed my name when I was younger to reflect on a more English-sounding name or a translation of it. But as I grew older, and when that happened to me, I remember saying that when I'm 18, I'm a legal adult, and I will get my name back, and I will make sure that I'm Gioconda, that's my name. And I thought of that. I was this big. I thought of that of when I was a little child. I was very proud to be Italian, very proud of who I was, I suppose. I don't know. I found it very hurtful that someone would want to change my name. That had a strong impact on me to why I do what I do today, by the way. Creating, and again, that word's going to come up, an environment where you feel very free, where you feel very comfortable. And I make sure of that with the dancers I work with the people I work with. But yeah, so that, going back to what I was saying, that was very hurtful. I also had but as immigrants, we understood that we had to fit in somehow, and we allowed that to happen for a bit, even though it scarred. But I knew there was a time in my life that would change, and I was very strong about that. I knew, I could see it. I knew that one day I will have the power to change my name, to have my name back. I would have the confidence, I would have the right to have my name back. And I knew it inside me. So I just I just took it for a while. I accepted it because we had to find a way to fit in. But I knew, without being aggressive about it, without being hurtful about it, I just knew the time and place would come. But I kept it, and I believed in it, and I told my parents about it, and it did. It happened. As soon as I was 18, I was like, I couldn't wait for that day, I guess, because when I was 18, bang, it happened. By the way, I'm claiming my name back. It's Gioconda, and that's what it is. And so, and I was fun about it. Of course. School sometimes was difficult, but it's interesting how I turned that around as well. I had some, I think bullying happens with everybody. Let's face it, school can be hard. And I was bullied for sure. I was bullied because of my language, my heritage, that I was an immigrant I'm Canadian, but I was Italian. And I was bullied just because of my curly hair, my big nose. Who knows? We get bullied. And that was very hurtful. I decided to turn that around. As much as they gave me a hard time about being a ballerina, I turned that around as well with my choreography. I created those dances, like I mentioned earlier, in the schools. My teachers asked me to put on little choreographies for the class, get them involved. I think what happened was that I started to, I say this nicely, infect people with the idea that, hey, this could be fun. Or being involved in a creative environment, what that does to people as well. We were having fun, we were talking. And what I actually did, in my last year of my junior high, one of my teachers asked me for my theater class to put on a sort of like a musical, be part of this theater, music, dance opportunity. And I had those little bullies in the class, and I decided that I would use them in the work. I would just use them in the work and see if their fear, or whatever it was that made them do what they do, if it could break apart in the process of working together, or could I use their dynamic in the work? So using who they were and are, and use them in the work. And this happened. And I used a couple of them, and they kind of turned around. They weren't my best friends, but they laid off. And they liked the work. They liked being in it. They liked being part of what was happening, because, it was a bit of a hit in the school. It was fun. Maybe some laughed or ridiculed, but, they sort of stood up a little. They were a little prouder about what they were and what they were doing, and they were involved. So I don't know how today, when I look back, I don't know how I did that or why really. I said how or why, but how did I really, really do that? I think when we're younger, in some ways we're less afraid. We just try things. When we're kids, let's play. Okay, I'm the teacher and you're the student, and okay, I'm going to pretend I'm the teacher, and I remember doing that. So we're pretending, we're playing. And in the process of playing, that creative environment happens. That creativity, that creative energy gets sort of spread. Those particles get spread in the room. It infects the room. People start to play or come into it or sit on the side and want to be in it but don't get involved, or just being part of it, taking a chance, they get involved. And that infects them. Like they sort of change the way they feel about things maybe, or just because they have to focus so hard on the act that is being played that they forget about the other stuff they were doing or who they were. I think it was just that maybe I asked myself sometimes, was I pretending that I could do this? And then because I was playing, and then you just do it? I can't really answer that, because it was a long time ago, and I just know that I did it. And sometimes when I get stuck right now, and every artist, I hope, will tell you that we all get stuck. Fear is part of the creative process. I remind myself, come on, Gioconda, you did this when you were a kid. You didn't, don't let that fear turn into play. Let that fear, if it's not good enough, it's that constant wanting to be so good. But remember, it's the process. Remember, the fun part is the playing in the room, listening to the room and what you're going to do and what you're going to play with and who are you playing with, what are you working with, how does that, all of that. I think I was improvising since a little child, so we were all improvising in the room. We were working off of one another. So again, I always go back to playing, that feeling of playing and having fun and listening to each other, because that's the only way you could develop the work you want to develop. So that's, there we go. There we go.
Is that how you choreograph now?
Yeah. I do choreograph like that. Of course, my development of choreography process has changed tremendously from when I first started to where I am now. And I hope it will continue to change, and I hope it will continue to grow. But yes, the way I like to choreograph today, right now, is that I'm in the room and I'm listening to the room. But I start with a workshop. That, I don't know how that developed, honestly. I think I always workshopped. But today, the workshop process of opening up, again, this word's going to be constant in this interview, but walking into the room, listening to who I have in the room, listening to the room, wanting to create an environment that I want to create so that we all could work collectively, that we could collaborate. Listening to our egos and breaking them down and giving them up and sort of sharing them, breaking things down and building them up again. So I've developed a process where the workshop leads us into the choreography. I will create tasks that through a set of tools that I sort of work through in the workshop, that, starting with a walk and listening to the space between us and watching that space, pushing and pulling this space, how we're affected by the space, how we make space. It lets the room start to listen to each other as well. So it starts to connect us through our spaces as well. Through that moment, a whole series of tasks are sort of brought up in the workshop. Within those tasks, we start to develop movement, because we are constantly using the imagination to create movement through everything that surrounds us. Like I said earlier, everything moves. We could create movement from everything, even in this room. There's so much movement that could be made from it. So that goal is trying to find, and why we do that is because, and a lot of people work in this way, and it's just so much fun, because I love the individual in my work. I want to see the individual in my work. It's not a work about me. It's a work about the people I'm working with. We're all part of this process. So I love to see each individual personality come out in my work. So the tasks I give them are related to the work we're doing. And I won't define everything at this point. I'm just very vague here, but in it, they have the opportunity to bring a lot of information that comes from them into the work. And I will work with them after as I orchestrate from them as well. I'll start to orchestrate the work, bringing ideas in and taking ideas with them, working with them, redeveloping an idea, adding my ideas to it, adding my movement ideas to it, and all of a sudden it becomes a huge collaboration of work together. And I always mention that my works are in collaboration with the artists I'm working with. The piece feels like a little bit like my past as a childhood, where we were playing together. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, it gets intense, of course, because we become very passionate about wanting. It starts to build like a big symphony, a big orchestration at one point. So yeah, we become very involved, and yes, there might be like where you want it to go further, and you start to see ideas develop, so then you start pushing and pulling and bringing more ideas in. But with me, it is about playing, about orchestrating. Like it becomes very complex. I love to see things come in and out and layering of of movement happening, but I have to have an honest response with each of those layers, like music, like composition, you know, listening to what's about to come and then being surprised, where did that come from? Where did that next note come from? I wasn't expecting that to happen, but it has to sit perfectly into the score. So it takes a room to make that happen. It takes the dancers, the artists that you're working with to make that choreography happen. And it's a lot more fun than it being about me and everything about what I have to say. It's about what we have to say together. I have the opportunity to walk into a new environment, a new room, and meet new wonderful artists that are very distinct and very individual. And I have the opportunity to work with them collectively to create something new. And that's pretty profound for me. That's what makes my life pretty special. And I have that great opportunity. How lucky am I to go into a room and play with a new cast very often throughout my year, my season, my life, and meet new people. And actually sometimes, and this is a very big part of what I love to do, and a lot about what I'm doing right now with To Dance in this work, and actually most often in most of my works, where I hope that we leave a mark everywhere we go. We plant a seed, and sometimes that seed germinates later on, many, many, many years later on. But it happened because I planted that seed earlier in my life, or I might have met someone, and everything along the way, because of that, sort of developed. And it might have been forgotten for a while, but guess what? Many, many years later, because I left my mark there, we get to meet here. And we get to work together here. And it happened because we met there. And this is really a lot about what I do in my work, in my choreography. How you leave a little bit of you behind all the time. And so that's why I want the dancers to leave their mark in the work as well. So they leave a little bit of them inside that work. And then it goes on. We connect with it, we collaborate with it, we share it. Sometimes you have to give up a part of it, and then you share it with somebody else. And so it teaches us, it gives us that opportunity to learn how to work together, collaborate together, to be aware of our environment together, but yet remain very strong and very individual while you're doing that. That means a lot to me, and I'm very lucky to have that opportunity.
I have the intermittent privilege to talk to dancers with sometimes 5 years in between conversations.
Yeah.
And a number of folks speak very much like you speak.
Oh, okay, good. That makes me so happy.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, every year I invite the same people back because I want to hear more of this talk. I also hear people who talk of themselves as living tools. And sometimes that's the reason they left dance and went on to do something else.
Interesting.
And sometimes they embrace that. There's a lot of talk about the knitting you do while you're waiting for things as a dancer. And there's a sense in that talk about knitting and hanging around, kind of a funny kind of disengagement. I'm wondering, have you encountered that idea of dance, or was your life charmed enough that you missed that?
Yeah, that's a good, very powerful question. I have to admit, it makes me a little shy to say it as well. I was very fortunate. I don't know how, but why. I always knew I was going to dance. I can't explain that feeling. I always knew I was going to dance. It's just something I knew. And I was very fortunate that I did just that. In saying that, it doesn't mean that I wasn't disappointed along the way. It doesn't mean that I got everything I wanted to do. It's just that I have to be honest, I never gave up on it. Along the way, I had goals that I wanted to go towards. And I wasn't accepted somewhere. Or somebody said to me once, I don't know, you might not make it as a dancer, as a professional dancer. Someone had the nerve to say that to me once. Oh, no, I knew in my heart I was a dancer. And he was so wrong, of course. He was so wrong. And I knew he was wrong, even though he made me cry and it hurt. I knew he was wrong. And I don't know how to explain that to you. I just knew it. And I just didn't give up on it. Because really, right away, all the people who did believe in me were, my guardian angels were there. They were there, and the next step happened. You know, I went to the next place. And the next place brought me to, right away, working in leading roles. The next place, 3 years later, when I returned to that place, because I don't want to mention all these people and names and stuff, they apologized. Because they got to see me in 3 leading roles 3 years later on that stage. So these things happen. And you know what? In some ways, maybe it kicked me in the butt. I don't say it needs to be that way. I honestly don't. Because I don't condone it in the work that I do. But I just didn't give up. And I'm not saying either that if you don't give up, it'll happen to you. I admit that somehow I was very fortunate. I was very lucky. It just, one step led me to another step. When there was a rock in the way, that rock was there. I had to figure it out. And it's, you know, I know this is so cliche, but I had to work through it. And I worked really hard to get where I am today. I never stopped working. I'm very active. I'm very supportive. I work really hard at what I do. I had to work really hard to become the dancer that I was and the different kind of dancer I am today. And perhaps, like I said, when NDT3 came to me in my 40s, I was completely blown away that actually happened to me, that I got to have a second career in dance. I danced with Les Grands Ballets for 16 years. And I went off to create and have an independent dance career for dance and choreography for 2 years. And in that time, I was called to Nederlands Dans Theater III. And having that second career opportunity as a dancer still, it was, yeah, beyond my expectations. I can't even explain to you. I never imagined that would happen. It wasn't even my goals, because I couldn't imagine that I could go there. But yeah, I'm the arc, the line of my career, that arriving to where I am today. Yes, I was very fortunate along the way, but with a lot of hardship. But I just kept going. I just kept believing in what I was going to do, and that I believed I was going to do it. I just can't explain that part. I don't know how. It's just something you have inside you. Yeah.
What's different about a troupe for dancers over 40?
It's different for, oh yeah, oh wow. There's something that happens when you're later on in your life, in your career, you've danced a long time, and yes, I've danced a long time, and there's so much history in our body, right? It's just there. It's in every vein. It's lived through so many years of dance, of life, of experience, and if you have the mind and body that still is curious, remains curious, and wants to keep learning, wants to go on, just wants to, it has the facility or the strength or the curiosity or the passion to do so. Dance over 40 is that you're bringing a different physicality to the expression of movement. You're bringing a different mindset, or maybe a mindset that has a lot of history to it, that has a lot of background. It could be a mess, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that there's a lot going on there that you get to share. And collectively, when you have a group of dancers who have had quite a strong background in their career, and you all come together and you work very well collectively together, and you had the experience and the opportunity to work with Jiri Kylian for all those years, and all the wonderful choreographers that were part of those 8 years of working with the Nederlands Dans Theater III. They were a big and an important part of that. What's it like? You get to share that in that environment, to be over 40 with bodies that are working differently. We're not kicking our legs around our head, perhaps, the way we did when we were younger. There's just a different expression that comes out in the body. We get to take a little bit more time sometimes to figure it all out. It's easier to work with the choreographer. It's like working with one-on-one. You're just having a nice dialogue with them, which is what I'm hoping I give to my students and the artists that I work with professionally as well. But that was something I felt very comfortable doing when I was with NDT3, and it's just, they've already know who you are, and they're not expecting you to do 32 fouettes or do handstands, and I'm saying that in that way, but there's a different mindset and a different expression of the body, for sure. I'm bringing that back. That happens. There's a different way that we work together in the studio. For us at NDT3 anyway, there was just a mutual understanding about things that you do, and even just the way a rehearsal was run, if you needed a break, it happened. Work times were different. We worked really hard, really hard. There's no question about that. We all had a passion for our work, and we were totally committed. But I think the body, the mind, said we just accepted that age time, that what it has to offer and what it had to give. And the choreographer knows that, and he's working with it. He's listening to us, just as I mentioned before. We're listening back and forth, and you give what you can. You give more than you can. Sometimes some of it was taken away. We learned how to be still also. That was a big thing I learned. Wow, was that a big thing for me? Learn how to be still and be vibrant at the same time. It's already there. It's inside you, Vibrancy in the stillness. How important that was. Because the body resonates so much in that time already. It has so much to say. So learning stillness was a big part. And in saying that, it doesn't mean that we weren't very physical. Boy, hugely physical. Hugely. But it doesn't stop.
I'm curious about how you make dancers over 40 clear to an audience. I mean, I remember buying standing room seats for the ballet in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
And from standing room, you see big gestures because you're that far away. What you describe as a subtler kind of dance, is there something to be done to prepare the audience for a different relationship?
No, I think, there's so much volume in the body, in the expression of a body. There's so much volume because it's also everything that the space that surrounds us. We fill that volume as you get older. We fill that volume. It's the space that surrounds us that we fill it because it resonates from something, the history inside us, the energy we have, the knowledge, the experiences we've gone through, the fact that we're still there, the wanting, the sharing, it's part of what we're doing. So gestures have a different meaning, perhaps. They come from a very interior place. So many layers that have the opportunity to be expressed. In all our performances with NDT3 are very physical. And I know I mentioned earlier stillness, but the stillness and huge physical movement, meaning that it's still vibrant, that we learn that an expression and movement goes on and on and on. That never ends. So in all our performances, an audience was standing at the end of a show because they felt it, We had standing ovations everywhere we went. So there was no need to prepare. They were moved by what they saw. They were moved by the response they had as well. They were surprised probably. They maybe had different idea of what they were going to see, but there's strong physicality. There's a strong expression of movement. There's a strong idea of where dance is coming from and where it's going to go from that person as well, from that artist as well. And I think it hits the audience. I think it reaches out and hits them. It touches them, it moves them. They might relate to it, or want it, or wish it. So all those feelings are still being projected or taken in.
The experiences you describe are so powerful and so amenable to development. How do you know when it's time to move on?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'll just know. I think it starts to, the passion to dance for me has slowly declined because I have the power, the excitement, and the fact of working with people is becoming a little bit more fun to do, in the sense that working in a room and creating, maybe I'm going back to my childhood a little bit, but how do you know is that, in my case, I think I'm just going to know. Just like I knew I was going to dance my life, maybe I'll always dance. I just know that I'll never dance the way I used to dance, and I accept that. I'm just fortunate because I get to live as a dancer and a choreographer, or working in a creative environment. I think in my case, I'll just be happy if I get to be live in a creative environment for a very, very, very long time, or for the rest of my life somehow. Or just make everything around me a creative environment. Maybe that's what I'll do. But about giving up, when is it time to stop dancing? I think I'm just going to know. I can't, this I can say, if you think you're going to dance like you always did and expect that of yourself and only see dance in that way, then yeah, I think you're going to know, or you're going to say, well, then I'm only going to dance to a certain age. But I don't see it that way. I see dance growing and changing just as I'm growing and changing. And dance will evolve as I grow and change as well. The dance I want to do will grow and change around me, with me. Maybe I'll change it. Maybe someone else is changing it as we're developing and seeing that dance grows and changes along the way as well. So for me, one day maybe I'll just dance less and less and less until I'm just sort of involved in a different way of dancing and moving. But I think I'll always dance. I think I'll always dance because I'm still dancing when I'm choreographing. I'm always involved in that room. I don't choreograph from my chair. So somehow the message will get out because I still get to dance in that room with everybody else.
Two words have been central today, luck and creativity.
Yeah.
But I know you're a teacher, and I'm curious, what have you learned in this long time you've worked with these notions about how to create an environment in which people who are perhaps less lucky than you were can become creative?
Yeah.
What surprising have you learned?
You know, I think I started this workshop process because as a choreographer, I was trying to, this was way back, I was wanting to get an expression out of certain dancers at a time, or out of my choreography. I wanted this idea to develop. And I was just trying to figure out a way to get it out of these dancers that were younger, that had less experience, for instance. And I realized that at that very moment, I was in an environment where these students were very open to anything I wanted to do. I felt it. And that's what I mean by listening to the room when it first happened for me. And so I'm going way back here, but what surprised me at that very moment that I just said, well, what if you were to sing that sound, and would it make you move? Like if you sang in a very low tone, low voice, and you just let your body fall into that sound, what would your body feel like, look like? And man, it happened. They went into that place, into those movements that I wanted them to go into, that I had in my mind. And right from that, I'm not kidding, that right from that moment, I realized all I had to do was ask. All I had to do is listen to the fact that these dancers were open to trying to do that. And while we did that, they got all excited about that place that they went to with their bodies that they didn't think they could go to. And it all happened because I was curious to see what would happen and allow myself to be in that freedom to do it, and them also giving me the freedom to do it. And the give and take started there. The push and pull started there. The responses happened there for me. The question, the responses, all the give and take, push and pull. And I realized from there, all I had to do was just find different ways to find movement in those dancers. So I started realizing with dancers that had less experience, the more I just developed the process, a workshop, words, a way, creating an environment, they actually helped me find a way to create an environment that was open and more free, because they needed that to get to where we collectively wanted to go to in the end, where maybe I wanted to see, I had an idea and wanted to find a way to get there. So I was curious at how can I do that? But it was because I also had a room. I was lucky because at that one moment in my life, in my career, in my experience, I had a group of dancers that were open to give me that opportunity as well. And in it, I started to create this. And that was the beginning of that workshop. And now it's just, I realized how important that was. And I try to create, through my workshop, this idea about space and how we open up to it and how we listen to it and how we're all connected to it. Through that, everybody's egos open up and listen as well. And then that's how everybody in the room is important. And everybody in the room feels empowered enough that what they have to offer is very important to listen to, watch, and we all work together in bending it and shaping it and orchestrating it to the point where it gets the results that we want. But my surprise was just listening to the fact that they wanted to go there. I just had to find what it was to let them see that they could go there. And then I realized that all the answers were correct in the room. All the answers are correct, they're just different. So how do I bend and shape with them to make them all respond? And how they make them believe that they can do this as well. And so we're finding ways to do that constantly. And what's interesting is that in supporting one another through the process, they also accept ego. The ego changes, and they also accept that sometimes you have to give it up and support. And by supporting what's happening, they are empowered as well. Because we all have our opportunities, we all have our turn within that group to do that. So there's a lot of give and take, push and pull, giving it up, supporting. These are words that we use a lot in the process now. And that's helped everyone in the room. And then along the way, a lot of them become curious about creativity as well because of it. They realize that there is a freedom in it, that can empower them as well, empower them to feel a certain confidence. And that's what I mean about that. Like how that they might have the confidence to try to do that and try to build a room that they could play in as well. And so that's, I think, my biggest surprise in how that developed as well. And I hope that I continue doing that. That's all. I hope I can continue doing that.
So that first class, or that early workshop, kind of gave you the confidence to develop a particular style of working.
Yeah, that particular workshop, I had already been doing some to do my work, but that opened up another door for me, let's say. And I don't know if I have a particular style, and I don't claim to, actually. I don't claim that I have a particular style. Every time I'm in a room, I always tell everyone that everything I give you is to be shared, to go on with this, because you're going to find a way to do this differently. What I'm giving you, you're going to go on and share, and then you're going to find a way to express it. You're going to find a magic moment that might open up a door for someone else. But yeah, that moment was the beginning of a new way. It opened a new door. And the reason why I'm saying that is that's why I do what I'm doing now. I keep finding new doors to open. People give me new opportunities to find those doors to open. I keep learning from the room that I work with because I keep pushing myself to try doing something different or to express something. That means I have to find another way to get that movement quality or that idea out of that dancer.